My name is Zak Bagans. Over the years, I've walked into countless haunted locations, places heavy with emotion, tragedy, and darkness. But nothing prepared me for the disturbing energy surrounding Blackwood Manor. Even before I stepped foot inside, I felt it. A pull, a pressure, a warning, something ancient circling the property like a hungry predator waiting for someone to cross its path. The moment we arrived, the forest surrounding the manor went silent. No wind, no movement, no birds. It was as if the entire landscape froze the second I stepped onto the cracked dirt driveway that led to the house. Blackwood Manor stood tall against the dying light of sunset, massive, rotting, and strangely alive. Its windows were hollow eyes staring down at me with a cold intelligence. Its walls looked swollen, warped by time and something else, something unseen. As I walked across the overgrown courtyard, the air changed. Heavy, thick, charged with static. I could feel energy pushing against my chest, almost like resistance, like the house didn't want me here. I raised my voice recorder and said, "I'm entering Blackwood Manor for the first time. If there's something inside this house watching me, I want you to know I can feel you." The front doors were tall and carved with intricate patterns now smothered by dust. But beneath the grime, I saw symbols, circles, lines, markings etched deep into the wood. I pressed my hand against the door, and it vibrated faintly under my palm. Not from age, not from wind, from something inside. I pushed the door open. A cold breath of air slid across my face. The foyer was a cathedral of decay. A massive staircase curved upward into shadow. Tattered curtains hung from the second-floor banister like blackened skin. Dust floated in the beam of my flashlight like drifting ash. But the silence that was the worst part. It wasn't just quiet, it was suppressed, like the house was holding something back. I stepped onto the floor, and the boards groaned under my weight. The temperature dropped instantly. I whispered, "This isn't just a haunting. This house has awareness." There were portraits lining the walls, old oil paintings of the original owner, Alistair Blackwood, and his family. Dark eyes, pale faces, but something about the portraits felt wrong. When I turned my flashlight away, I sensed movement in my peripheral vision. When I turned back, the faces looked slightly different, sadder, angrier, more distorted. I moved deeper into the foyer. The air felt thicker the closer I got to the staircase. A cold rush slid down the back of my neck. I lifted my recorder again. Is someone standing behind me? A faint crackle. Then silence. I continued through a narrow hallway to the right of the foyer. The wallpaper was peeling off in long strips. Every step made the boards beneath me moan like distant voices. The deeper I walked, the stronger the pressure grew in my head, a spiritual tension I'd learned to recognize over the years. Something wanted my attention. The hallway opened into a parlor room. I stopped the moment I stepped inside. Something was horribly off. The air felt alive. A grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed and cracked. A velvet armchair faced an empty fireplace. But the most disturbing part was the wall opposite the window. Symbols, shapes, lines, spirals were etched deep into the plaster, carved with force. Not random, purposeful. I approached the wall and traced the grooves with my fingers. "These markings are ritualistic," I whispered. "They weren't meant to summon something, they were meant to contain it." As I examined the wall, the piano released a soft note. One single key pressed itself down. I spun around, flashlight shaking. No wind, no movement, nothing that could have hit the key. I raised my voice. "Alistair Blackwood, is this you?" Silence. Then the temperature plummeted again. A shadow moved across the far wall with slow, deliberate motion. It wasn't mine. It wasn't shaped like any of the furniture. It was tall, narrow, human in outline, but distorted as if stretched unnaturally. I stepped backward toward the doorway. "Show yourself." The shadow froze. Then it turned, as if facing me. My chest tightened. The air felt like it was collapsing around me. I moved out of the parlor and back into the hallway. A heavy thud echoed from upstairs directly above me. Then another, slower this time. Measured footsteps pacing the second floor. I stood perfectly still, listening. The footsteps stopped. Then a long, dragging sound scraped across the ceiling. Something heavy being pulled. I whispered into my recorder, There's something on the second floor pacing above me. The energy in this house is responding directly to my presence. I moved back into the foyer and pointed my flashlight up the staircase. The upper landing was swallowed in darkness. I felt compelled to go up there. Something wanted me up there, something waiting in the dark. But before I took a step, a draft of cold air blew down the stairs, hitting me with such force it staggered me backward. I regained my balance and said, "That wasn't a natural draft. Something is pushing me back." I forced myself up the staircase, gripping the railing as I climbed. Halfway up, I heard a faint whisper, too soft to understand. A woman's voice. Sad. Hollow. When I reached the top, the darkness felt thicker, almost physical, like a barrier. To my left was a corridor that ran the length of the second floor. Every door was slightly open. Every room breathed cold air into the hallway. I turned on my full spectrum camera, letting the device scan the shadows. I entered the first room on the right. Bookshelves lined the walls. Dust-coated tomes leaned at odd angles. A desk sat in the center, covered in old papers. I approached the desk and realized the papers were journal pages written in frantic handwriting, words layered over words. Sentences crossed out and rewritten, symbols drawn with disturbing precision. I picked up one page. The house listens. Another, it follows me between the walls. Another page, the door must remain closed. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "What door?" I whispered. "What were you trying to seal?" The floor creaked behind me. I turned slowly. A figure stood in the doorway, just a silhouette. No features, no details, just a dark human shape. I stepped forward with my recorder raised. "Who are you?" The figure didn't move. I took another step. "Alistair Blackwood, did you open something inside this house?" Suddenly, the figure dissolved into the darkness like smoke caught in a draft. The room temperature dropped to near freezing. I whispered, "This house is showing itself piece by piece, like it's choosing what I see." And then I found it. At the very end of the hallway was a door, not cracked open like the others. This one was sealed shut. A rusted lock clamped across it. The wood around the lock was charred, as if burned. Faint carvings etched the doorframe, circles and symbols matching the ones in the parlor room. I lowered my voice. "This is it. This is the door from Blackwood's writings." I pressed my hand against it. A surge of energy shot through my arm like an electric pulse. My breath caught, my vision blurred for a second. Behind the door, something responded. A shift, a pull, a low rumble in the wood. I whispered, "This door is holding something back, or trying to." The air behind me changed. A presence approached. Slow, heavy, closing in. I turned. A tall, dark figure stood at the end of the hall, motionless, watching. The house was no longer hiding. It was revealing itself to me, one piece at a time. And that sealed door was only the beginning. I lifted my recorder slowly. "If you're here for me, I can feel you." The temperature dropped again, sharp, sudden, biting. My breath drifted into the hallway as pale mist. I took one step forward. The figure didn't react. I took another step, still no movement. My body felt heavy, like the air thickened around me to keep me from getting closer. Then the shadow receded, gliding backward into the darkness until it merged with it and disappeared completely. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. The silence felt heavier than before. A thought struck me with sudden clarity. As I leaned closer, the wood vibrated under my hand. A low hum throbbed behind the door, so faint it was almost imperceptible, but there, alive. A heartbeat in the walls. I pulled my hand away. This is the center of the house, the core. Everything is connected to this room. I stepped back, scanning the hallway with my flashlight. Each door behind me remained open just enough to show glimpses of darkness inside. I felt like eyes were staring at me through those cracks, eyes belonging to things that no longer had bodies. I needed answers. I returned to the study where I found Alistair Blackwood's scattered journal pages. The air inside had shifted again, colder now, but not as aggressive as before, almost expectant. I closed the door behind me and sat at the desk. Dust rose around me in soft waves. The journal pages were spread across the surface, but one page I hadn't noticed earlier lay face down on the floor. I picked it up. It was dated just 2 days before Blackwood vanished from the manor forever. The voices know my name now. The house copies the sound of my footsteps. I hear knocking behind the sealed door, rhythmic, intelligent. If I break the lock, it will no longer be the house's burden. It will be mine. My pulse quickened. I turned another page. The entity does not speak in one voice. It speaks in many. It is not a spirit. It is not a demon. It is something older. It shows itself when I sleep. In the corner, in the cracks, in the mirror. I cannot escape it. The house will not let me. A chill ran down my spine. Blackwood wasn't performing rituals to conjure something. He was trying to contain something already here. Something tied to the land. Something awakened long before he arrived. I gathered the pages and slipped them into my bag. I stood now, flashlight scanning the room. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper than before. As I approached the exit, the door shook just once, violently, as if something pushed against it from the other side. I backed away slowly. The door creaked open on its own. The hallway was dark again, darker than any normal absence of light. My flashlight struggled to cut through it. The shadow I saw earlier was gone, but the presence was still here, stronger. I whispered into my recorder. I'm being watched from multiple points. The energy feels layered, intelligent, like there are several entities moving through this house at the same time. I stepped into the hallway. A groan echoed from downstairs. Not the creaking of wood, not the sound of settling. This was deeper, almost vocal. A low moan that rolled through the house like a warning. I headed down the stairs. Halfway down, the chandelier hanging above the foyer swayed gently. Not from airflow, not from movement, from force. A deliberate push. I felt the cold burst of energy before the chandelier jerked violently and crashed into the ground with a deafening explosion of shattered glass. I shielded my face, heart pounding. That wasn't an accident, I said. Something tried to stop me from coming downstairs. The foyer was now littered with broken crystals and splintered metal. The crash echoed through the rooms and died into silence. I stepped carefully around the debris. As I reached the ground floor, a soft sound came from the parlor. The piano, a long, slow melody, uneven, broken, like someone dragging fingers across the keys without knowing how to play. I walked toward the music. The parlor door was open. A faint light flickered from inside like a candle flame, though no candles were lit. I stepped inside. The piano keys lifted and pressed down on their own, one note at a time, slow, rhythmic, almost like a message. The hairs on my arms stood straight. I approached the piano cautiously. The keys stopped. Silence. The room grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me. I whispered into the recorder. Is someone trying to communicate with me through the piano? A single key pressed, a low note, long, held, then silence. Something behind me shifted. A floorboard creaked. I spun around. Nothing. But the air changed again, thicker, charged. The fireplace snapped loudly. Dust cascaded from the mantel above it, and then something caught my eye. Inside the fireplace, etched deep into the stone, were the same symbols from upstairs. Circles, lines, angles that made no logical sense. But these carvings were more precise, cleaner, as if someone or something had carved them with extreme care. I kneeled and ran my fingers across the grooves. They were warm, not heated from fire, but warm from energy, spiritual heat. I closed my eyes and listened. A faint humming sound reached my ears, not from the room, from within the walls, like a vibration traveling through the entire manor. I whispered, "This entire house is part of the ritual, a vessel that contains the entity." The humming grew louder, and then it stopped abruptly. The quiet that followed was suffocating. I stood. Something was moving in the hallway. Soft footsteps, slow, heavy, coming directly toward the parlor door. I moved to the doorway and leaned out. A shadow moved across the hallway wall, long, tall, distorted. It stretched unnaturally as it approached. I stepped back into the parlor, flashlight pointed at the doorway. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, Soft, hollow, right behind my ear. Open the door. I froze. The recorder captured it clearly. My pulse hammered inside my chest. I gripped my flashlight tighter and turned slowly. The room was empty, but I felt breath on the back of my neck. I whispered, "Whatever is behind that sealed door upstairs wants release." Suddenly, every window in the parlor rattled violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. The piano played a harsh, discordant cluster of notes as if struck by invisible fists. The hallway lights flickered. Dim, bright, dim, bright, then darkness. For 3 seconds, the house was pitch black. When the lights returned, I saw it. A figure standing at the end of the hallway. Tall, thin, its head tilted slightly toward me. I stepped into the hall, flashlight aimed directly at it. The beam passed through it like smoke. The shadow didn't move. It didn't vanish. It simply watched. "This entity isn't bound to one room," I whispered. "It moves freely. It observes. It adapts." I took one step forward. The shadow dissolved, sliding along the wall and disappearing into the cracks of the staircase, not disappearing entirely, retreating. I stood there in the silence of the hallway, breathing slowly, controlling the adrenaline rushing through me. It was clear now the house wasn't trying to scare me. It was testing me, probing me, trying to see if I was the one who would finally open the sealed door. The first part of this investigation was over, but the house was just beginning to reveal the darkness inside its walls. And the sealed door upstairs waited for me to return. I stood at the foot of the staircase, staring up toward the second floor where that sealed door waited like a living thing. The shadow that seeped into the cracks had vanished, but the energy it left behind felt charged, restless, almost hungry. Blackwood Manor wasn't just active, it was anticipating something. Anticipating me. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and began climbing the stairs. Each step creaked under my weight, echoing through the hollow rooms around me. Halfway up, the house shifted again. The boards beneath me flexed as if something heavy stepped on them at the same time I did. My breath caught. It wasn't copying me for the first time. It was syncing with me. When I reached the landing, the air was colder than before. My breath drifted upward like fog escaping a crypt. The long hallway stretched in front of me, doors open on both sides, the sealed door at the very end like a black mouth carved from the house itself. I raised my recorder. This level of activity doesn't make sense. Most hauntings rise and fall, but this one is building. Layer on layer. Whatever's behind that door isn't isolated. It's controlling the house. A soft knock echoed from the sealed door. 3 slow taps. Deliberate. Measured. A pattern. I froze. Another knock, this time from behind me, from inside one of the rooms on my right. I turned. The bedroom door creaked open on its own just a few inches, enough to reveal darkness deeper than the rest of the hall. I stepped toward it cautiously. Inside, the room was empty except for a worn 4-poster bed draped in a dusty sheet. The fabric moved slightly, rippling across the surface like something crawled beneath it. I whispered into my recorder. There's movement on the bed, pressure under the sheet, but there's nothing visible. The sheet stilled, then a small indentation appeared, shaped like a hand. A child's hand. Deep breath, steady voice, focus. Are you the child seen in the forest outside Blackwood Manor? The indentation pressed deeper, and the sheet tightened as though fingers curled inward. Then another indentation appeared larger, adult-sized, resting directly beside it. My chest tightened. These aren't residual imprints. This is active, intelligent, 2 entities, or 1 shapeshifter. A sudden wave of cold hit my right side like something brushed against me. I stepped back. The sheet sank sharply in the center of the mattress, as if a weight dropped onto it from above. The dust burst upward in a cloud. I backed into the hallway. The bedroom door slammed shut behind me, hard enough to shake the floor. I spun toward the sealed door at the end of the hall. The symbols etched into the wood were glowing faintly, an eerie red, pulsing like embers. The lock vibrated, clattering as though something struck it repeatedly from the other side. I approached slowly. Each step felt heavier, like gravity increased the closer I came. I stopped inches away from the door. A whisper seeped through the wood. Low, raspy, layered with multiple voices speaking at once. Let me out. The energy slammed into my chest. I staggered back. No, I whispered. You want me to be the vessel. That's what Blackwood feared. The temperature dropped sharply. My ears filled with a deep rumbling like the world beneath the floorboards was shifting. The lights in the hall flickered, dimmed, then burst bright white. The lock on the sealed door snapped. Metal cracked. The latch fell to the floor. I stumbled backward again, flashlight shaking in my hand. Something just broke the lock from the inside. The door didn't open. It just breathed. A wave of cold air pushed through the cracks around it, carrying dust, old wood, and something else. Something that smelled like soil freshly dug in a graveyard. I reached out and touched the door with the tip of my finger. The wood pulsed under my skin. I pulled back instantly. This wasn't a room. It was a containment chamber, and whatever was inside was fighting to break free. I forced myself to remain calm. I moved down the hallway, past the other rooms, recording everything. Halfway down, the walls throbbed again this time, with a low tone, almost like a chant. The voices came from the cracks behind the wallpaper, layered, whispering, calling, not in English, not in any recognizable language. The air pressed against my shoulders like invisible hands, my heart hammered, my flashlight flickered violently. I whispered, I'm not alone in this hallway. There are multiple entities surrounding me right now. Suddenly, all the doors down the hallway slammed shut at the same time. The sound thundered through the house. Dust exploded from the ceiling. I turned back toward the stairs. A tall figure stood at the bottom. Its head almost touched the ceiling. Its body was stretched unnaturally thin. Its arms hung too long, almost reaching the floor. Its face was a void. I froze. The figure didn't move, didn't sway, didn't breathe. I raised the recorder, my voice steady but tense. If you are the entity that Alistair Blackwood tried to contain, I'm facing you now. I know what you are. The figure took one slow step forward. The staircase groaned. Another step, and another. My legs stiffened involuntarily. A wave of nausea hit me. The air thickened like smoke. My head throbbed low, rhythmic pulses synchronized with the house itself. The entity reached the middle of the staircase. The shadows behind it swirled and twisted like living things. Every instinct in me screamed to back away, to retreat, to escape, but I held my ground. I pressed my back against the wall, forcing myself to keep the camera focused. The figure paused. The house went silent, completely silent. Then it spoke, not with a mouth, but through vibration, through the walls, through the floor beneath my shoes. A deep, ancient voice, woven from hundreds of whispers. You opened the way. I shook my head. No, I didn't open anything. You broke the lock yourself. The figure tilted its head in unnatural, jerking motion. You came, when called. I stepped sideways, keeping my distance. I didn't come because you called me. I came because this place is dangerous. Because the people who lived here were manipulated by you, and I won't let you manipulate me. The entity stepped onto the upper landing. Its shape distorted, shifting like smoke caught in a current. The house chose you. Why? I whispered. The lights behind the entity flickered rapidly, strobing the hallway. You, here, us. The whispers surged again like thousands of voices pressed into my skull from every direction. I steadied myself and backed toward the room where Blackwood kept his journals. The entity followed, slow and deliberate. This isn't just a haunting, I said. This house is feeding you. It's channeling something ancient, something tied to the land long before Blackwood built this manor. The figure paused again, less than 10 feet from me now. Its shape shifted, flickering between forms. A man, a child, a distorted shadow with elongated limbs. Then back to the void. A perfect mimic, perfect predator. Open. The chamber. The walls trembled violently. Plaster cracked and fell to the floor. The entire house vibrated under my feet like something massive was moving below. No. My voice shook, but my resolve didn't. I'm not opening that door. The entity surged forward, not walking, not stepping, but expanding, stretching across the hallway like a sheet of black smoke pulled taut. I stumbled backward into the study, slamming the door shut behind me. The doorknob twisted violently from the other side. My breathing was sharp, unsteady. This is escalating beyond anything I expected. The house groaned deeply. Something large slammed against the other side of the door. I backed away toward the center of the room. The temperature dropped to freezing. The journal pages rustled on the desk. One page lifted on its own, floating, turning, so I could read it. Alistair Blackwood's handwriting. If the door breaks, leave the house. Do not face it alone. Do not let it follow you. A loud crack echoed through the hallway. The door frame splintered. The entity was forcing its way in. My heart pounded. There was only one choice. And I hated it. But it was the only way to survive the night. I had to retreat, to regroup, to face whatever haunted this manor on my own terms. The final confrontation was coming, and the house knew it. I stood in the center of the study, breathing hard, listening as the entity slammed its weight against the door behind me. The entire frame rattled like it was about to splinter. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Every instinct told me to run, but the rational part of my mind, the part trained through countless investigations, forced me to stay steady, to observe, to document, to understand exactly what I was facing. The journal pages scattered across the desk, rustled again, as if stirred by breath. I stared down at the page still floating in front of me. Blackwood's final warning echoed in my head. If the door breaks, leave the house. Do not face it alone. Do not let it follow you. The door behind me groaned. A crack ran from the top of the frame to the floor. Something pressed through the opening, black, formless like smoke forced under pressure. The flashlight in my hand flickered. My recorder buzzed with static. I whispered into it, something is pushing through the door. I'm watching it force itself into this room. This is not a human spirit. This is something older, more powerful, more intelligent. The house responded with another deep rumble like a warning or a command, or both. The floor beneath me trembled. The symbols inside the fireplace began to glow again, this time brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. The temperature dropped so sharply that frost spread across the edges of the window. I needed to move. Now, I backed toward the far wall, keeping the door in sight. The black smoke pushed farther into the room, stretching upward until it formed a tall humanoid shape. No eyes, no mouth, no features, just a void pulling in the surrounding light. Every shadow in the room leaned toward it. Every sound in the house went silent. It raised an arm long, thin, impossibly distorted. The motion was slow, deliberate, like it was reaching through water. I could feel energy gathering in the room, electric, sharp, almost painful. I whispered, "You want me to open the sealed chamber. That's the only reason you haven't attacked me directly." It froze arm mid-air as if it understood. Then it spoke, not through a mouth, not through sound, but through vibration deep, grinding waves that resonated through the walls, through the floorboards, through my chest. "You finish what he failed." Alistair Blackwood. The lock, the door, the chamber. This thing wasn't trying to escape. It wanted a host, a vessel, a bridge between its world and ours. And it thought I was the one. I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm not breaking that seal." The entity stopped inches from me. The cold radiating off it was unbearable, sharp and metallic like the air inside a freezer. I could barely breathe. "You open the way." "No." The entity trembled violently. "You will." The entity advanced again, its form stretching across the floor toward me. I crawled sideways, pushing myself behind the overturned chair. Its voice filled the room, layered, chaotic, 100 whispers speaking as one. "The house chose you." I forced myself to stand, leaning heavily against the wall. "No, the house didn't choose me. You did. And you're using this house to gain strength." The entity recoiled. Its form rippled violently, as if my words struck a nerve. I grabbed the recorder and held it in front of me. "Whatever you are, you're bound to the chamber, because Alistair Blackwood put you there. You're not as powerful as you want me to believe." The house reacted instantly. The ceiling cracked. Plaster fell in chunks. The floorboards curled upward, bending unnaturally. The fireplace roared to life with a burst of blue flame. My recorder crackled violently, emitting bursts of static. The entity surged forward again with a distorted, jerking motion. Open it. I could hear the entity following, not with footsteps, but with vibration shaking the walls, shattering the framed pictures, cracking the plaster. When I reached the staircase, the air shifted again, no longer freezing, now burning. The entire hallway felt like it pulsed with heat, unnatural, suffocating heat. The chandelier shattered on the foyer floor below as I stumbled down the steps. Halfway down, the entity materialized behind me in a burst of shadow, filling the landing above me, its shape, elongated arms reaching, stretching toward the staircase railing. You cannot leave. Yes, I whispered, I can. And I did the only thing I could. I jumped the last 4 steps, hitting the floor hard enough to make my knee buckle. I staggered toward the front door, throwing my full weight against it. It didn't move. I slammed into it again. Nothing. The house wasn't letting me out. The air behind me thickened, charged alive. The entity was descending the stairs, but I had nothing left to lose. I jammed the key into the old iron lock of the front door. It didn't fit perfectly, but it wedged just enough to turn. The lock clicked. The door blasted open with a violent gust of wind, sucking the air out of the foyer. I stumbled into the night, the cold outside slamming into my lungs. Behind me, the entity reached the doorway but stopped. Its form thrashed violently, unable to cross the threshold. It pressed against the frame like an invisible barrier held it back. Then the house groaned. Every window shook. The lights burst inside one after another. The entity retreated into the darkness of the foyer, and the front door slammed shut on its own. The forest surrounding Blackwood Manor was dead silent, no wind, no insects, not even the rustle of branches. I backed away slowly, recorder in hand. This house isn't finished. It didn't push me out because it's safe. It pushed me out because something inside is waking up. The manor loomed in front of me, tall, crooked, alive. Somewhere inside, the sealed chamber was open now. And I knew what I faced tonight wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning.